Hello and welcome to episode 10 of the Hashtag Product Design podcast. For those of you who don't know or couldn't guess by the title, this is a series of talks where I'll be picking the brains of industry experts exploring different topics within product and design. I have the pleasure of being joined today by my good friend Pascal Hoffmann, and today we'll be covering the topics of how design and freelance work has changed over the last 20 years and why should designers potentially choose freelancing over permanent positions. Pascal, again, pleasure to have you on here. Please could you start
Yeah.
by giving a quick overview of you and your career so far?
Yeah, thank you, Matt, for the introduction. Happy to be here. I'm working as an UX and UI designer so now for 20 years. Within the 20 years, I'm supporting teams to bring their product ideas to life. Within the 20 years, I had the opportunity to work for around 40 to 45 different brands and clients. And I worked for around 300 different projects. So I had a lot of different insights in the industry. I worked for small teams, big teams. I worked for agencies, startups, and I also worked for performing and non-performing teams. But I'm also forcing myself to be creative by heart. So I'm also doing a lot of side projects by myself. Right now, I'm a father, so I'm creating a child book. And I'm also creating new iOS games or something like that. So I'm forcing myself to learn more about new technologies and all that stuff. But overall, I'm more helping design teams bringing their ideas to life.
Yeah, for sure. Plenty of experience to note, of course, over the last 20 years, I can imagine. So look, obviously the first topic we wanted to cover off. Now, generally anyone in design who works as a professional designer understands that there is two options when looking into being a professional designer. You know, you go down the permanent route where you'll be permanently employed by companies, or alternatively, as you have done for the last 20 years or so, is to work as a freelancer for different companies or different positions. Now, 20 years is obviously a long time.
Yeah, it is.
Design, obviously I've been working a lot less time than you, but certainly since I started working in design recruitment, I've certainly seen shifts and changes in the market generally, in salaries, in demand for designers and things like that. But how would you summarize firstly how design itself and the demand for freelance designers has changed over the since you started 20 plus years ago to today's date, would you say?
When I'm thinking back about my starting point, I have to really go back to 1998, 1999, something
Yeah.
around that. So, and it was some kind of digital ice age, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a complete different time. So no smartphones. The internet was just 56K modems. Maybe you remember that time. So
Well,
when
I
you
was at
heard that weird
not
sound when
yeah.
you go into the internet
Yeah.
and open up the website, so it was a
No,
strange time.
yeah,
It
19,
was
1998. I was only actually 1 years old, so I don't really remember
okay. Okay.
it.
Okay, I'm born 78, so I'm now
Yeah.
yeah, good. Then you don't remember that time, but it was
Yeah.
a really strange time because Photoshop was there, but it was the time of Flash and all that stuff. So
Mm.
it was really a complete different thing. And I was producing music. 1998, 1999, I started with producing music, and so what I realized is that was the first contact with the creative industry. So I
Mm.
realized, okay, I have the opportunity to create stuff and listen to it later. So it was the first time I realized that I have the opportunity to create stuff by myself. So, and I was living in Cologne, West Germany. So, but I had no real impact in the design industry. I had no idea what I wanted to do. My brother had a film production and so on. And I was completely new in the sector, but I wanted to do something in that area. And so on some point, I decided to leave Cologne and move to Dresden, East Germany. And that was a big step for a Western guy to go to East Germany in 2000.
Yeah, yeah.
But for me, it was the best decision of my life because I went to a school, and in this school, I had the opportunity to get a lot of different insights about different topics. So it was about painting, development, film production, photography, and all that stuff. So, and that helped me to identify myself. So,
Yeah.
so I come from a family, everyone has his own office. My grandpa had his own company. My father had his own film production. So for me, it was more or less clear that I wanted to go also in this direction to be my own chief.
Mm.
So, and on some point we had in the school, it was in year 2 or 3, some guy from an agency in Dresden came as a speaker to the school and as a mentoring. And so I talked to this guy, and we really was totally into Flash, Photoshop, and 3D architecture. It was a
Yeah.
complete different sector at the beginning. Yeah. So and yeah, so it was more a sneaky process to come into that freelancing role, because you start working for one agency, and this agency has one job for you, and then if you're good performing, you maybe have the chance that this guy, because Dresden is really small,
Yeah.
uh, goes to another guy he knows and then says, okay, I have a great designer here, and work with that guy. And
Yeah.
so I had this opportunity to come into different roles. And that was the beginning of that
Yeah.
freelancing. It was never a real decision to
Mm.
be a freelancer. It was more like that I was, yeah, rolling into that
Yeah.
freelance situation.
Mm.
And it was really crazy, because at the beginning I really found it. The first project I was paid for was a book.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was the Zoo Guide for Dresden, and that was my first project I really got money for.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it had nothing to do with Flash or
Yeah. Yeah.
web or something like that. But it was a really great opportunity, because I had the freedom to do what I wanted to do,
Yeah.
and no restrictions and all that stuff. And that helped me to identify myself as a
Mm.
creative. So for me, it was clear that I wanted to be my own chief, and I wanted to have that new experiences and not sticking into one company, one team for
Yeah.
years. So I worked for, I lived in Dresden, I think 9 years, something around 9 years.
Mhm.
I worked for almost all agencies that existed in that
Yeah.
time in
Yeah.
Dresden.
Yeah.
So
Small network.
and
Yeah.
yeah, but it was really strange time. I was totally into Flash, and I remember the good old times. I mean, in 2000, you never had this kind of easy progress where can go to the internet, download something for
Yeah.
free. You really had to be creative. That was a different kind of process.
Yeah.
And when
Mm.
I'm thinking about the days now, so I mean, you already also know it, that you have everything for free out there. So you
Mm.
have a lot of people, they think they are also designers, but they never really went to the process of really
Yeah. Yeah.
creating things from scratch.
Mm.
And yeah, but overall it was clear for me that I wanted to do something
Yeah.
freelance roles. But it was not easy, because at the beginning, I mean, one of the big learnings is never rely on one client. Yeah, so if you
Yeah.
work for one company and you think, okay, now they pay your bills for the next 3 months, and then you realize as a freelancer, okay, now it stops, now they have no money anymore, now
Mm.
they have no projects anymore. So it was a big learning, that I had to understand that only working for one company is really not the best situation you have as a
Yeah.
freelancer. So
Yeah.
it could be dangerous, and on some point maybe you have 3 months gap. So it
Yeah.
was really a situation where, yeah, how can I identify how I can bring up myself for the agencies? And
Yeah.
I I remember the good old time Redbox. That was a platform where you can find all the agency addresses and email addresses. And I
Yeah.
went to Redbox and wrote down 400 email
Yeah.
addresses from
Yeah.
400 agencies. And then I've sent out emails every year twice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So only to bring up myself on the table. And
Yeah.
sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. But it is really, it was struggling at the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
Sure.
felt good because I have the freedom of free time, and I earn a lot of
Yeah.
good money. So in this time I didn't
Yeah.
earn good money, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did a lot of stuff for free. So
Yeah.
but it was really something I grew in, yeah, so to be
Yeah,
honest. So
definitely, definitely. How did you? One question I wanted to ask you. Obviously, design, as you mentioned, changed massively over the 20-year period that you've worked, and obviously when you started it, there was a lot of different. It sounded like you had to be a lot more creative. There wasn't as many, nowhere near as many resources, things that you could download for free and use and things like that. But how did you find the transition when things like Sketch and Figma and tools were introduced? How did you find that transition of course becoming an expert in those things, having to learn new tools, and of course when the digital era also came into play and a lot more products were being digitized? How did you find that transition period from that?
Yeah, when I started, the word UX or UI was not existing.
Yeah.
We were web designers or something like that.
Mm.
And on some point, we worked in Photoshop, or some people worked in InDesign for web
Yeah.
design. And when Sketch came up, it was really clear for me, and I directly understood the benefit of working with tools and with like Sketch. So for me, it was also always important to be up to date when new
Mm.
tools are coming up. And I directly realized the benefit of working with Sketch. But I also realized that a lot of companies are old school and they are still wanted to work with Photoshop. And for me, it was always important to be up to date. And nowadays, when you come to Figma did a lot of different things than Sketch did. We have
Mm.
this really big community thing where you. So nowadays, it's much easier for a lot of people to be creative or be designers.
Mm.
I realize it often when I come to companies and you work with a lot of designers, they maybe have 5 years of experience or something like that, but they are not really problem solvers. Yeah.
Yeah.
So many of them uh, took an idea from there, take this, download
Yeah.
this template, move
Mm.
things around, and then
Yeah.
bring it onto the table. But they are not
Yeah.
really.
Do you think the not the existence? I think user experience has always been there. It's just not been titled user experience or known as the concepts of user experience. But do you think the development and higher focus on user experience has led to the design role being much more business or problem solving focus as opposed to just being people who create nice screens, essentially?
I mean, this is why we have UX and UI. Yeah? So
Yeah.
UI is to create something that looks nice, but UX for me, it's just when you bring it down to the core, UX is just problem solving. So you
Mm.
have an idea, you have a goal, and sometimes you have a real complex product, and the real goal is to cut it down to its core main parts, and you really think about how you can solve these problems. So I would say the situation is still the same. I was always a problem solver. Always
Yeah.
had that thing as an UX designer in myself, even when I'm not using the term.
Mm.
But I think that is a real thing as a UX designer nowadays, that you have to understand the company, the brand, the goals,
Mm.
also the team, who they are working with. And what helped me a lot is also had a lot of different insights and different topics to producing music. When I'm working with Photoshop a lot, when I'm working with 3D stuff, that helped me a lot to identify problems a little bit better than maybe others,
Yeah.
and that helped me also to be a better problem solver when it comes to working in projects. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think the amount of time that you've worked on in different industries, different sectors. I wanted to ask you, when it comes to the identity of user experience, as you said, when you started, it wasn't really a thing. It was more like a web design position. Then when do you think, timeline wise, it did start to become identified as user experience and user interface?
I think it was something around mid of 2005 or something like that.
Mm.
I don't know what exactly when the
Yeah.
term came up, but like I said, for me, user experience, even when I didn't know the term, was always existing
Yeah.
because I was
Mm.
always thinking about it. And I think a lot of the other designers had this situation as well. It's not only
Yeah.
about me. But I think everything changed something around 2000, because when I started, the UX part came sometimes from the marketing department or from the business department. And so I think the idea came up that the designer should be the conceptor and
Yeah.
the guy who's thinking about how because he knows the world of design. So, and I
Yeah.
think that was the reason why this came up, and it was a good thing.
Yeah.
But nowadays UX and UI is just a term, and for me, now after 20 years, it's like you are. I think when you compare it as a DJ, yeah. So
Yeah.
in the good old days, you have to go into the store, check the vinyls, buy the
Yeah.
vinyls.
Yeah.
You have to move the vinyls, and nowadays you just download a few MP3s, come with your little stick, and say you're
Yeah.
a DJ. So this is, you know what I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
But I think it was mid of 2005, 2006 where it
Yeah.
really came out, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Now next, like going back to yourself, and obviously, the shift from when you again started and up until this point, how do you think the projects that you work on now have changed since you first started working? And obviously it's quite a general topic, but how do you see maybe the length of the contracts that you get now, or how much you integrate with the existing team, how much impact you can have as a freelance designer now? How has that shifted from when you started to today?
Yeah, so I also had long and small term contracts in my past, but to be honest, so from the contract length or something like that, I don't think that something really changed. So what I realized is that a lot of companies not able to invest this money for freelancer, because with freelancer are much more expensive,
Yeah.
and we will leave the team on some point. So I think money is also a thing where I realized, so that I only work for big agencies right now and big companies with a lot
Mm.
of money back up in the background. But yeah, I don't know if this really changed. It is more the situation that you have a lot of, the market is growing, so we have a
Yeah.
lot of different so many different people, they call themselves UX and UI, and
Mm.
it's much harder to be unique nowadays,
Yeah.
and really so it's not easier, it's more,
Yeah.
it's harder than 20
Yeah,
years ago.
sure. So what are your personal preference going back to here, but what are your favorite projects to work on as a freelance designer now?
Now, so yeah, when I'm thinking about my really the real love project, I'm thinking about my own projects mostly. So because this is where I really had the opportunity to
Yeah.
be the creative I wanted to be. And one project I founded Movebox. That was a project I founded 2016, and it was a project. So when you're thinking about Pinterest, you know Pinterest, I think,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
sure,
So
yeah.
Pinterest was focusing on images and all that stuff to this point. And I was, as a music producer, I had 3 different SoundCloud accounts. I had
Yeah.
2 Mixcloud accounts.
Yeah.
I had Vimeo accounts, YouTube accounts. So, and I came up with the idea: why are we not doing something like Pinterest for videos and
Yeah.
music? And we had a really good start. So we went to Vienna, and we have been in the 25 most promising European startups for
Nice.
3 months
Yeah.
in an accelerator. We have been in Mumbai for 6 weeks in a school in the slums.
Yeah. Yeah.
To find developers. We also have I've been in Mumbai for in the top 300. I won an award in France, Paris, first prize. It was really going well. So we had a really good starting point, but that was also some really big learning for me, because you have an idea, you have everything, you have a cool setup, you have a good impact, and at the end you realize that your team is not the best team.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when I'm thinking about project, I'm really behind, and I really would say that is the thing I really love, is my own projects.
Mm.
But this was really something I was I was really enjoying that thing, to create it by myself, getting the team on board, have this
Yeah.
impact, and that felt really good for me. And I worked on a lot of different projects and a lot of different teams, but I would say the project I'm doing by myself are the most
Yeah.
interesting project
Yeah, for
I
sure.
have to design.
So, going back to the same sort of topic, and obviously you mentioned that your own projects are your favorite ones. Let's say, for instance, like someone like myself or recruiters reach out to you about positions.
Yeah.
Now when it comes to assessing freelance positions, of course, I know we've worked together before, and I know generally what you look for as our relationship has grown. But I think just for people listening who want to know, what do you think are the best projects you get reached out to about are? So, what types of companies do you prefer working for? Things like that.
I prefer working in companies where I learn something. That
Mm,
is really something that I enjoy. So
sure.
I work for a lot of different setups, like I mentioned before. And so I worked for companies that it felt like a school where you get paid.
Yeah. yeah.
And it
Yeah.
was really an amazing experience when you're
Yeah.
working with professional people and you have this impact and you really see that product is growing. But I also worked for companies with 70 people and the product is not moving in 1 year.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for me, it's always good. So it's also something I would say for freelancers that want to come in, or even in the design industry. I think it's really cool if you're working for small teams at the beginning, because you have this more
Mm,
deeper insights and you're working closely together. You have much faster processes.
yeah.
And but I would say I cannot say that it is a specific type of
Mm,
project. It's more a setup of the company or of the team.
yeah.
And I prefer really working with professionals where I have the feeling, okay, we have professional developers,
Mm,
professional project managers, but it's not that I would say it is a specific brand or the
yeah.
specific
Sure.
company.
Sure. So let's say when you're approached about a position and potentially you're going to interview with this company, now how do you assess when you're speaking to the company? Because obviously they're interviewing you for the position, right? But you're also interviewing them for a potential project that you're going to work on. So how do you assess when speaking to companies, speaking to hiring managers who might be interviewing you? How do you assess at that point whether there is going to be a professional team, the product's going to go somewhere in the duration of your project, and then ultimately assess that they're the right project to take on at that time?
Yeah, it also depends. So sometimes you work in companies where you have 4 or 5 designers working on the same project. So I'm talking with them and find out what they really just what they are looking for. So some people want that lead position where you
Mm,
lead the team and where you really have this opportunity to have that impact, and you choose how we proceed, and they really want the impact. And for me, after 20 years, it's important to have that. So I always want to know if I am more just doing some stuff, or if I'm really into the role where I can bring in my insights
mm,
and my experience from 20 years. So that
yeah.
is really a question I come up most of the time with any interviews. So what are you looking for? Do I have the opportunity to talk free, or do I have the opportunity to
Yeah.
just keep quiet in the background? And so for me, when I'm really searching for new projects and new companies or new clients, I like the idea of really find out if I'm able to really bring in my experience. This is something that's really important for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Now, I think it leads us naturally into our next topic, and I think one of the things you said about prior to the last answer that you gave was about designers who are looking to get into the game. Maybe start off with smaller teams to have faster processes, bigger impact. So the second topic we wanted to cover off, Pascal, was obviously why should designers potentially choose freelance over permanent roles? Now, of course, you've been working in freelance work for the entirety of your design career, right?
Yeah, right.
Of course, I think, as you said, it's become a massively more competitive market. There's so many people that now have ventured into design in some form of way. But open question: why should or why did you opt to choose freelance work over permanent positions for your career?
So for me, it was like I said, it was more something like it was in my DNA, I would say,
Yeah.
because I come from that family background where everyone had his own offices and
Yeah, sure.
companies and all that stuff. So that was something I really had in my DNA, more or less. So at the other point, I mean, when you're starting freelancing, you have to be aware that it's not every time going really like this rocket man. You have
Yeah.
to, and especially nowadays, when I started, I was not a common thing. So in Dresden, you had not so many flash designers at this
Mm.
time. So, but now when you go to LinkedIn or something like that, and you look how many UX designers are
Yeah.
out,
Yeah.
I mean, 100 to 200 different UX people.
Mm.
So working as a freelancer is really not the easiest thing. So you have to think a little bit like an entrepreneur. Yeah? So
Mm.
you have to organize everything by yourself. So you have no safety line. Yeah, so it could, especially when Corona hits us. Yeah, so
Yeah,
that
of
was
course. Yeah.
really a thing where you realize what can happen as a freelancer. I
Mm.
was on honeymoon in Bali, and I
Yeah.
was really like, okay, I'm coming back. Everything will be good. Let's go crazy here.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then I came back, and everything broke down, and I had
Yeah.
no job offer for 1 year.
Yeah.
You have to deal with that. So
Yeah.
Corona is not hitting every month, but I think what I would want to say is you need that safety line. So
Mm.
I had a backup for my brother at the beginning, for example. So when 2 months no money was coming in, I had a brother on the side who
Mm.
was supporting me and helping me. So it has a lot of benefits, but it also has some cons.
Yeah.
I mean, you are free to do whatever you do. I mean, you don't have to tell anyone when you want to go to holidays or something like that. I
Yeah.
know companies or people, they have to plan their holiday trips 1 year
Yeah. Yeah.
ago. So it is super strange, and that was never a thing. And I also like the challenge. So coming into new teams, coming into new
Yeah.
projects, uh, get new triggers for my head. So that was really the idea why I choose to be a freelancer. But it, I mean, I cannot imagine something else. For me, it was also after 6 months. I always had that feeling, okay, working on this project for the next 3 years or something like that, that was not really
Yeah.
interesting for me.
Yeah.
So what I mean is you really need some kind of an
Yeah.
entrepreneurship thinking to be a freelancer and survive as a freelancer. You have to organize yourself, you have to market yourself, you have
Mm.
to pay taxes.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is the learning. This is not
Yeah.
your money what you earned. Yeah, so you have to learn that as well. So you have to organize yourself completely different than you are when you are employee. And I'm father, and I know a lot of people, they went from freelancing to permanent roles
Mm.
because of that
Yeah, sure.
fear. But I also thought about that at the end of Corona,
Mm.
when I was 1 year without freelancing
Yeah.
contracts. I really thought about maybe I should also go back into, or what means back, I should
Yeah.
think about some permanent roles. But I mean, I can only speak for myself. So for me,
Yeah.
it is my thing. I want to create things. I want to have impact, and I worked for so many companies with a lot of people, a lot of money in the background, but the product is not moving. And
Mm.
that was one of the biggest reasons why I choose. Okay, I can go to another team, and
Yeah,
now I
sure.
have the opportunity to create something new.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Very cool.
I think you make a really valid point there. I think some designers stay, like permanent designers, they stay in positions because the fear of moving too often damages their reputation, but also damages their CV when they're sending to potential hiring managers. You know, as a recruiter, a lot of the time you get pushback on people who have moved too frequently, because of course, you know, when they're looking for a permanent hire, they want them to stay there for a good amount of time. You know, they don't want to waste resources, waste time and effort hiring this person if they're going to leave after a few months.
Mm,
Certainly freelancing, you know, completely gets rid of that. You know, generally, you have contract lengths. Your notice periods are really short. So if you do, really hate the project or want to change projects very quickly, you can, and it gives you that flexibility to move
Yeah.
around much more often and have that diversity of projects that you can work on too. I think one thing I've certainly gathered from speaking to a lot of permanent designers who've worked for agencies, let's say, so not freelancing, but working as a permanent designer in an agency environment, a lot of them go into it and get into it for the exact same reason as freelancers in terms of diversity of projects and being able to work across different sectors, different projects.
Mhm.
But a lot of them say they really struggle with the ownership and the actual impacts that they can have as a designer. Certainly when it comes to more of the strategy and the business perspective or the business part of this role.
Mhm.
How do you see that as a freelancer? How have you seen that across the roles that you've had?
Yeah, this is totally true. So that is one of the reasons that forced me to go to the next company. So
Yeah.
because of the impact I had, so it was really strange when you're working 6 months, you're producing stuff every day, but when you take the real app you are working for and you can't see any change in the last
Mm.
6 months. I mean, and this is why I said small teams are much more interesting if you really
Yeah.
want to work as a creative and person, because you have this much faster process and you
Mm.
can work together. And so uh, I don't know how to say it, but it is. Yeah, I don't know how to say it right now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, I see where you're coming from. It's a common problem that I always see across the design community when speaking to people. It always comes from either agency or larger businesses that people work for. So if people work for global companies, the problem you have as a designer is that of course you're a very creative person and you also want to have impact. And certainly, I think the more senior you get in your career, the more business understanding you get, and you can certainly influence that as a designer. But I think what people struggle with, certainly with bigger companies or agencies, is that exactly what you said. The time it takes for the impact to happen is way too long for them. As a designer, as a creative, you want to see your work impact in a short space of time. You want to see how it works, then also understand how the user is reacting to the changes that you might have made, right?
yeah,
If that process of building something new takes 6-12 months, and then you have to wait that length of time to see it, then have to wait that length of time to see how the user reacts to it, and then if there's problems you have to go and fix them. That, I think that's why a lot of designers opt to change more frequently, not only in freelance but more in permanent and potentially other positions, because they don't see that impact at the company they might be working for.
true. Yeah,
And I think many designers I speak to much prefer to work for mid-sized to smaller startup businesses because of this specific part of their role, right?
exactly. I think so too.
Yeah, yeah.
Totally agree.
So other, I know we're discussing potentially why designers might look into freelance or opt for permanent positions. Where else do you potentially see the pros of being a freelancer can be in today's design market?
Yeah, the pros is definitely money, first of
Yeah,
all. Yeah, so
yeah,
you earn much more money,
mm,
and so this is one pro. You have this freedom of, okay, you have a contract, a fixed contract of 3 to 6 months, sometimes 9 months or something like that, but it's
yeah,
something around 3 to 6 months. You have the freedom to then go for maybe holiday trips if you want to.
yeah, yeah.
So you have a lot of more freedom of choosing the projects you want to work
Mm,
for. So from this point of view, money and freedom is one of the most
mm,
biggest benefits of being
yeah,
freelancer. But you
yeah,
have this pros and cons where you also have to organize everything by yourself, and no
yeah,
one is paying your taxes and
sure,
no one is paying your insurances. And
yeah,
so, yeah. But I would say the two main factors to be a freelancer is
yeah.
money and time. Yeah,
I wanted to ask you a separate question, Pascal. So I've never really explored the topic, but just come into my head based on the topic of conversation.
yeah.
I wanted to ask whether you've ever struggled to integrate. So obviously you've done many projects, and I'm sure you've worked with alongside permanent employees, right? So a permanent design team and working who are permanently employed, and you come in as a freelance designer to also work alongside those guys. Have you ever struggled to get buy-in from the designers that you've worked with because you're an outsider essentially, and they know
True,
that you're not going to
true,
be there
true,
forever?
true, true.
Have you ever struggled with that side of things?
I did. I mean, you coming into a project and maybe some other designer is working on that project for half a year or a year,
Yeah.
and now you come and you want to change everything. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but for me, it was also as a freelancer or something like that. I mean, when you come into a project, you have to realize what's existing, and you don't throw everything overboard. But
Mm.
they booked you for your insights.
Yeah.
They booked you for your experience. And
Mm.
on some point, some people nowadays are really observant that the people really want that I tell them what I'm
Mm.
thinking from my point of view. But in the earlier days, when I was more or less junior.
Yeah.
It was a different thing. So
Mm.
I had the same situation, but I really struggled, and I really had the situation where some people were not really reacting positive on my impact, because you move in, now you want to change everything, and in
Yeah.
3 months
Yeah.
you leave us here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I had that. Yeah, I had that. So yeah, and
Yeah.
maybe you remember that situation with the company. So where I had 3 phone calls on one day for one position.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
really one of the interesting situations as a
Mm.
freelancer. 3 companies had a pitch for one big company, and 3 companies called me, and I had 2 of them. They had a problem with my way of explaining how I
Yeah.
work, and the other person, the third one, was exactly open for it, and
Mm.
so he wanted to have this person. So I, I had definitely
Yeah.
situations where I struggled to work and come into the design teams, especially when it is really a short term,
Yeah.
just for a few weeks or something like that, that you cannot change too much. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. Because I think generally it's if you're working as a team. For instance, in my team, like if I was working my recruitment team now and they hired a freelance recruiter to come in and change or try and obviously help me, but certainly I think the more senior you get in your career, I think the less like willing you would be to someone else just coming in and trying to change the work you might have worked very hard on and doing. Of course,
Totally understand
yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, of course. And a lot of the time, the designers won't have influence on that decision necessarily. Often it's made by people above them and higher up than them. But yeah, I wanted to end on something. I wanted to ask you just to see whether you're open to obviously answering the question. But have you had any like notable horror stories or bad stories about a freelance project that you've ever worked on?
And so one really, that was the company I already talked about, where
Yeah,
I came in and told them that they switched to Sketch, and that
yeah,
was creating a configurator, a car configurator for
yeah,
a really well-known car brand.
yeah,
And I was working there for 11 months, I think. And that was really one of the craziest stuff that happened to me. And I have the photo. I don't know where the photo is, and maybe,
yeah,
yeah, I don't know. I haven't. And I was working there for 11 months, and I created, I think, 300 different versions of ideas and concepts,
yeah.
and nothing moved into the next round. And I had people like this. It was, I was so powered out. I was
Yeah.
really complete burnout at the end. My
Mm.
brain was not working anymore. I was off, and that was the situation where I ended the job because I had
Yeah.
no capacity anymore.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
brain was not working anymore, and that was where I realized that this is not what I want to have
Yeah.
as a UX and UI designer. I
Yeah.
really had to left. I went to Thailand for 3 months, and
Yeah. To
so
recover.
I
Yeah.
was really out of that job. No one can offer me how much money they want, but
Yeah.
I'm off. So, and it was really a strange experience, because you work your ass off, you create ideas over ideas, and really cool ideas. But the person over me had no balls
Yeah.
to bring this idea on the table of the next one.
Yeah.
So because it is too fast, we cannot do
Yeah.
that. That's not possible. La 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 la. Let's create some new versions of
Yeah.
it. And at the end, after 300 different versions of that configurator,
Yeah.
I really
Yeah.
I really had a burnout, and that it
Yeah.
was really a strange experience for me. As I
Yeah.
earned a lot of money, but at the end I
Yeah.
said, okay, I give a shit about that
Yeah,
money.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's
So
11 months just down the drain, really, isn't
it
it?
was, but this
Yeah.
was one of the really worst experience I
Yeah.
had. The other experience was where I was working for a company I worked for before as well,
Yeah.
but that was a different team and a different PM.
Yeah.
And this person came to me and used me like a slave. Yeah,
Yeah.
really. It was
Yeah.
really like, don't think, don't ask, go to that, copy, just copy it, move that. You
Yeah.
have to create 15 pages a day.
Yeah.
I was, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And then at the end, I was really like, on day 2, I went to my HR
Yeah.
manager and told her, no, I
Yeah. I can't work
cannot
like
work
this.
in
Yeah.
this environment.
Yeah.
This is not
Yeah.
how I can work.
Yeah.
Sorry. It was really strange. Just
Yeah.
take it from there. Don't ask questions.
Yeah.
Copy it, move it,
Yeah.
and that has nothing to do with what I wanted to do. And
Yeah. Of course.
so
Yeah.
after that, I had a lot of fear that I will never get a job again from
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
was really like 1 year, no other job
Yeah.
opportunity. And 1 year later, I asked them again, and I got another job from them.
Yeah.
But you never know if you're working for
Yeah. Of
different
course. Yeah.
teams, different setups. And you also know what happens is you get a job offer, you get a
Yeah.
go. You remember?
Yeah. Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
So you have no idea, and then on the day when you have to start, they cancel the job
Yeah.
for whatever reason. So this is the thing: you never know who you are working with and who
Yeah.
you are dealing with. So this is something.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's again
But these
something
are
that.
experience.
Yeah, I think that's again something you have to consider as a freelancer, but you have to consider that in a permanent position as well. To be honest, like
Sure.
generally, you
Sure.
know, freelance interview processes are obviously generally a lot quicker than what permanent interviews are. But even in permanent positions, you probably maybe speak to the company 3, 4 times, maybe depending on how long the process is, and you get to meet a few different people. But generally, they're all like hour conversations at maximum, and you judge this next life opportunity off of those short interactions with the company. So you do never know. I think it's really important for any designer in a freelance position or in a permanent position to really, during that interview process, as you mentioned, try and really understand as much as possible who the people you are going to work with, also how much they actually value design. I think designers and the design department will probably always tell people who are interviewing that the company really value design. You know, we're highly valued, and things like that. But I think, in my opinion, what designers should really do is, with the other people that they're interviewing with across different departments, ask them tricky questions about this type of this topic, because then you'll really get to understand from the other departments how much they actually value design, how much they actually cross collaborate, value your opinion, value your design work, how much impact design can have on the business as well. Because I think it's a huge problem often I hear when I speak to designers why they want to move is because, great design team, really enjoy the people I work with, but our manager or the head of product, whoever is the head of their team or whoever's above the head of design, potentially, doesn't really value us as a department. We're seen as just the design department,
Happens
not.
often.
Yeah. But yeah,
Happens
look,
often.
really appreciate your time, my man. Thanks very much for jumping on. Yeah, really enjoyed this one, and hopefully I think it's a really different one to what I've done before as well, so it should give a lot of designers a different insight into the potential of
Okay.
freelancing, obviously what the freelancing world is like, and hopefully promote a few more people to consider it potentially.
Thank you, man.